We've now arrived at the stage of the project where we're ready to put the movement back in the case. And as you can see, I've got the case laying here. I've got the 3 screws that each went into these holes laying here, ready to go. And since there was a screw missing from this location, I found a small screw that will work. And so we're ready to install the movement now. And this is not a difficult procedure. Since I didn't show removing the movement, this is going to be sort of the opposite. I had to thread the hammer out like so and get it in position here and get the holes lined up, and all the holes line up with the feet. And so we can start the screws, and these all these original screws should easily start by hand if you get them in the holes on the original thread without issue. And man, it's nice to have a clock like this with all this wide open space around the movement, where I'm not, trying to work in a space that wide. So take advantage of it when you get it. Very important that you try to catch the original threads, because you don't want to strip threads out. These backboards are generally made out of mystery wood like poplar or something. They're generally not very high quality. This screw is going to give me a little bit of trouble because it's obviously a little bit different than the others, not designed quite the same. I did run it in the hole and out without the movement there, just to make sure it was gonna, there we go. Okay. Don't like to get these very tight, just tight enough to hold things, but no tighter, so I'm gripping the screwdriver by the shank and not the handle to limit my torque. And then if I have the screw correctly in the right thread, it should screw in just like that and tighten up. Okay. With the movement back in place, before we put the pendulum leader in, we can make some adjustments to the hammer where it's accessible here. And it looked like we just struck, so... And it looks like the distance, you see the resting position, there's still a little bit of room for it to move over, so it's not resting on the gong. That's good. So as far as adjusting it up and down, it's striking the gong centered too. Okay, so there's no further adjustments that need to be there. If there were, I would bend the rod back and forth at a point that looks like would be suitable for doing that, probably somewhere around here, to get the distance correct. And this is the upper pendulum rod. Here's the lower pendulum rod. This is the part that you see in the tablet in the drop portion of the case. This is a cast iron bob. It's 4.5 inches in diameter. Brass covered. This is some sheet brass covering it. You see it's cast iron. There's the rating nut there to adjust the time. It's wooden. Looks like it's oak. And there's the hook at the top that the pendulum hangs from the rod by, and that's how it would mount. This rod looks pretty straight, and we'll probably have to set the beat anyway for the case once it's level on the wall. But if you didn't alter anything and got the movement exactly back the way it was, and it was in beat before you took it apart, it should still be in beat. We haven't made any adjustments to the escapement. We haven't bent the rod any. Haven't bent this rod, but I would still take note of which direction it was installed, since I can install it either way. Since this rod seems to be pretty true, I'm just going to install it in a random position. Gotta hold it up like this and pass it through the fork in the crutch. The end of the spring here, the suspension spring at the top end, has a small hole drilled in it with a piece of bronze wire wrapped and tied through it. And then this post that's riveted to the front plate has a slot cut in it. And we simply take and press the spring into that post. The wire through there keeps it from slipping through. And now you don't hear the movement fluttering anymore. Okay, now to put on the hands. We're not going to put the dial on, but take a look at this for a moment while I go grab the dial. This is the original dial. It's still signed at the bottom. Still has a little bit of the original Gilbert trademark. I don't know what I'm going to do with this dial yet. I don't know if there's a way to clean this up or what. It definitely does not fit the character of the rest of the clock. The oak is very light still, and it is still a very nice looking clock. The bezel is incorrect. But for the purposes of this initial installation, we're not going to install the dial. You see the screws for holding the dial are still in place here. When I took the dial off, I put the screws back where they go. Generally, too, these things, the dials have been on and off of them numerous times, and you'll see numerous holes along the edges in the dial ring that have been bored, as these screw holes have stripped out over the years, and the original screws have gotten lost. Subsequent repairs have made their own new holes in the case. And it's odd, too, that some of the holes don't even match this dial, but it's a Gilbert movement, it's a Gilbert dial. You can tell by the mounting feet marks that this is the original movement to this case. So there's no telling what's gone on there. But we're ready to put some hands on. I haven't done anything with these hands. I won't do anything with them until after I know what I'm doing with the dial. Count wheel strike clock. It really doesn't matter where you put the hour hand on. Just slip it on there. There's no dial on there right now, so don't press it down very far. Minute hand. This is a passing strike clock, okay? So there is a definite hour and half hour position on this clock. If this was like a lot of conventional count wheel clock, like a lot of American clocks are, where it strikes on the gear train for the hour and half hour, it wouldn't matter where you orientate the minute hand. But we just heard it strike as we put it in the case. So we're going to put the minute hand on in a trial position. And most minute hands are definite which direction you put them on. See, the tip is bent towards the dial. So this side needs to face down towards the dial. This is a newer arrangement for holding the hands on. The 1908 Gilbert kitchen clock behind me uses a taper pin to hold the minute hand on, but this 1912 movement uses a hand nut. So we're going to turn the minute hand here. Okay. Now this has a mechanism that does allow you to turn the hands backwards without damaging the strike. So we're just going to go ahead and arrange these hands to where they're roughly pointing at 12 o'clock and make sure they're aligned with each other. There's a couple different ways that you could synchronize the strike on one of these clocks. Since there's no synchronizing wire hanging down, what you can do is, because this does have the turn back feature, you can simply turn back to about 20 till. Or you can come around like this, come up to about 5 till, and then back down to about 20 till. I honestly recommend this method better because it does, even though you can turn the hands backwards, doing this way puts less strain on that feature of the movement, which relies on some of those brass levers being a springy nature with a cam profile, where they will sort of ratchet backwards as you turn the hands backwards and then forward operate normally. I believe that was 6 o'clock. And of course, there's also the method that seems more obvious to modern users, since the hour hand is just a friction fit on there, is just to turn the hour hand to correspond to the hour that's been struck, and then, so this should be 7 o'clock. I think 7 o'clock is more like there. Okay, we'll check the hand alignment at 9 o'clock. Okay, we want a 90-degree alignment there between the minute hand and hour hand at the time that the hour is struck there at 9. And you can see it's not quite square with the movement, and I'm not worried about that, because what is important is when the dial is on here, that occur within half a minute or so. Actually, the tolerances on these are pretty sloppy, so I'd say up to 2 minutes in either direction, that the hour occurs, the strike occurs, at the top of the hour within, 2 minutes either way. If the movement's real super tight, I'd say a minute on either side would be acceptable. On one that's real loose, 2 minutes. If you can get it 30 seconds on either side, half a minute on either side, that's really good. But I would strive for at least a minute on either side. And I did not go over how to adjust that. That's kind of outside the scope of this video at this point. Maybe in a future video series I'll cover that. Okay, that's enough of me rambling on. That's casing the movement back up. The next video, the case will be on the wall and we'll have the clock running. So join me for that. This is Oklahoma Bridges. Thank you for watching.